We're back. A dinosaur story, part 2.
A dinosaur
Could you imagine
story?
if that got a sequel?
It didn't get a sequel yet. Anything can happen.
What about Dinosaur X Shadow Generations? What do you think about that?
I think he killed Exo.
Oh my goodness.
What happened to Exo? Where is he?
Has your brain ever rebooted while you were still alive? I feel like that's what I just experienced because my head went like blank from laughing so hard. Oh, okay.
Well, I'm back, and I got myself a chilled glass of rum, so I'm ready.
King, what did you bring to drink today?
Well, I was drinking at the holiday party, so I cut myself off after I put a bunch of caramel vodka in the cider that they had, so
Ooh.
it was pretty good.
Well, that sounds delightful.
Yeah.
What about you, Exo? What are you bringing to the bar today?
Oh, I'm drinking water.
Yeah, it's
Nerd.
what I'm drinking right now, too, to avoid unpleasant morning.
Best way to avoid an unpleasant morning is some people say Taco Bell breakfast. Some people say Taco Bell's breakfast is good. I'm too scared to try it. McDonald's breakfast. McDonald's breakfast, it works every single fucking time. If I have a nasty hangover, Mickey D's.
Taco Bell breakfast is pretty alright.
I recommend the Jack in the Box breakfast jumbo
We
platter.
don't have that shit over here. I don't even know what that is.
You don't?
I know what Jack in the Box is, but I don't think we have those here in Florida.
No, we don't got that shit.
Huh.
I occasionally hear people say Jack in the Box, and I don't know what the fuck that is.
It's basically just another fast food burgers and fried food joint.
Oh, well, there's apparently going to be 10 Jack in the Boxes opening up in Orlando at some point.
10.
10? It's a California-based burger chain. Oh, and there's apparently one opening up in like Nona. Wow. That's neat.
You guys got Culver's?
We do
Nope.
have Culver's, yes.
And I hate
Hell
that we
yeah.
don't because I love their custard.
We'll get some Culver's in Michigan because we got plenty of those.
Oh my god, yes. We also don't have Noodles and Company, which was my favorite.
Oh man, I love Noodles and Company.
When I was going to college for 4 years in the Midwest, I would go to Noodles and Company every Saturday just as a thing. And now I can't do
Yeah, I
that
love
anymore because
them.
we don't have them. There's one in fucking Vancouver, Washington, so basically on top of the Oregon border. So I'd have to drive for like 6 hours. Sucks!
You know, there's a place called Junior's Colombian Burger, and they make really good Colombian-style hamburgers and hot dogs.
What is a Colombian-style hamburger?
Think a hamburger with the works, but also with pineapple sauce, or sometimes just a smoked pineapple, and crushed potato chips.
Huh.
That sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, it's savory and sweet. It's really good. Also, pineapple on pizza is pretty good too, so...
I've never tried it. I probably should.
I like it. I'm one of those people.
I can't have an opinion.
Don't tell me you put Canadian bacon on there too.
Sometimes. Depends. It's not my favorite topping, but...
Okay. What was it that Anger said in Inside Out? San Francisco ruined pizza, first the Hawaiians and now you. Anyways, we're back to talk about Sonic times Shadow Generations.
Can all that stuff be in the podcast?
Yes.
That make me really happy. Yay!
Well, I'll just put it under a chapter called Fast Food Talk or something. Yeah.
It's fast food. Sonic's fast. There's a fast food place called Sonic.
Did anybody tell you, slime ball? There's food, fast food, and too fast to be food.
Speaking of
It
Sonic,
works.
the Sonic fast food chain is like a cryptid. Every once in a while, when you're out traveling somewhere, you'll see one out of the corner of your eye, but no one's ever been inside one of them. It's crazy.
Well, you don't go inside of a Sonic.
You don't go inside them,
Yeah.
They're like A&W.
But they like have commercials on like every network, like 24/7. But nobody has ever seen one of these restaurants. Like, where do people live where these are common? That is my question for the chat.
I know where there are two.
I mean, we have a bunch of them over here, so I guess
Yeah.
in Michigan.
Exo, have you never had a Sonic restaurant before?
I've never been inside one. No, I know of one
You
in
can't
the
go
state.
inside one.
Yeah, it's
you
impossible.
pull up to a thingy, and then they come at you with roller skates, and they give
Come
you
at
food.
you.
I thought that was. Have you guys ever seen Flintstones Viva Rock Vegas?
No.
That happens in that movie. It's like a prequel movie to the John Goodman as Fred Flintstone movie.
Oh.
Yeah, where I think Wilma and the other one are working as waitresses at like one of those skating diners.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen
the other one. My favorite Flintstone.
Yeah, what is it? Barney's wife, Betty. Is it Betty?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I watched the Flintstones? I don't know.
They're the Bedrock family.
Are they?
Yabba dabba, don't watch that show. Anyways, let's talk about the video game that came out this year.
The Flintstones video game?
Yeah.
Flintstones.
Did you guys
Shadow
know?
Generations.
Did you guys know that
Shadow
one
Generations.
of the
We're on Shadow.
besides Nintendo World Championships, and I think there's like a version of that track and meet game on NES that's like really rare because they pulled it. But besides that, one of the rarest games on the NES is Flintstones Surprise at Dinosaur Peak, which is my favorite video game title of all time.
Yeah.
Because I just love the idea that one of the rarest games in existence that people will pay thousands of dollars for to complete their NES collection is called Flintstones Surprise at Dinosaur Peak. Anyways, we were talking about a different video game, Ryan.
Dinosaur X Shadow Generation.
Wouldn't it just be Dinosaur X Biomoose Generations?
Yeah.
There you go.
Someone make a mod for Sonic Time Shadow Generations where you play as Fred Flintstones on roller skates. Imagine him doing the Sonic Adventure pose.
Yabba dabba damn fourth Chaos Emerald. That's all I got. Good night, folks.
Well, gentlemen, let's start with overall impressions. What did you think of Shadow Generations?
It was awful.
Yeah, it sucks.
Well, I thought it was the worst thing I've ever seen.
It was worse than the kidney stone I passed on prom.
It was worse than the Flintstone I passed.
Oh, I went lightheaded again.
Oh no.
The hits keep coming from King K,
Are you
everybody.
sure you're drinking water?
No, yeah, I've got water.
You didn't grab
Yeah,
like the vodka or something?
I don't drink. I don't have any booze in this house.
fair
Michael,
enough.
that's not water, that's vinegar.
Listen, I know the taste of something salty going down my, and it's usually not vinegar.
Come.
Yes, that is what I was referring to. Very
Nice.
good, Ryan. I'm proud of you for guessing correctly.
You get
Yeah.
1,000 points on the Jeopardy board for that one.
Yeah.
Yay!
What is semen?
A person out at sea.
Yeah.
A video game for the Dreamcast starring Leonard Nimoy.
You know who's not a seaman is Shadow. Because he
That's
was
true.
in space.
Yeah, he
He's
has
a-
to surf. He can't swim.
He has a stingray. I like him. He's nice.
So what did we really think of the video game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you
It was
have to
good.
say?
It was good. It was quite good.
I thought that it was really good. I mean, I don't know.
What about you, Michael? What did you think of Shadow X Sonic's the X Feet Generations?
Thanks, Pete. You know, there's a really nice, gorgeous shot of Sonic's feet in the first film that I'm going to put up on screen right now for everybody to enjoy.
And I know exactly what shot you're talking about.
Yeah. Where, like, you
I
can,
hate that I do.
there are like holes in his socks, so you can kind of see the other side of his foot. And the socks are like dirty and you have like spots on them. Yeah. And imagine what that smells like, folks, and then
Yeah, I bet you
use
do.
the bathroom. Yeah, I guess I'll answer your question with another question. Why is the toss-off Shadow game made to sweeten the package of re-releasing Generations the best Sonic game I've ever played?
I don't know what that
Cool.
means.
Yeah, because I loved this game. I think I liked pretty much everything about it. You know, it reminded me of years ago when we did our Sonic Forces. I almost said Sonic Foreskin. Sonic Forces podcast.
I don't remember that game.
Well,
I do.
you're not gonna find it on Steam, so I'm gonna say. But
But it
So
won't make you
grounds?
steamy.
yeah. Well, Sonic Forces, when we did our podcast on it, I think towards the end, Dan, you said something to the effect of, why can't Sonic Team just make a good game?
Did I say that? That was like ancient history. I don't remember anything I said in that.
You said that, and at the time I was like kind of defensive. It's like, well, making one of these games is harder than you think. Making games in general is harder than people think. Things never go the way you expect once your stuff actually hits a playtester, but regardless, that's pretty much just what they did here. Is Sonic Team were finally like, wait a minute, we can just make a good game. Why don't we try that for once? And then they did. And then I played it, and I thought it was amazing.
Now, Exo, does this mean you hate Sonic Frontiers?
No, of course not. I still like that game.
Okay, good. I was about to banish you.
No,
Shadow Realm.
well, here's the thing. Sonic Frontiers I like as a fan of collectathons. That's basically what that game is to me, is a big collectathon where you run around and grab things. And then that's kind of the thing that... And then there's like some token traditional Sonic levels sprinkled in with bad controls that you can play for progression or whatever. They're okay. But what was kind of nice about that game is that they finally got the engine in a place where 3D movement wasn't super... Those were the worst parts of Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations, in my opinion, was anytime you were supposed to run around in 3D. So they finally got it to a place where like there's a decent amount of handling. But the problem with Frontiers is that the boosts sucked. Because I remember playing, what's that song, Running Into the Lights, that level.
Yeah.
And it's just like the boost feels like it makes you 2% faster, and it just does not feel good. So they fixed that in this game. So you have like the better 3D control of the Frontier cyberspace levels with a real boost and some actual thought out level design for the first time in who knows how long, and it's great.
Yeah.
And it does reuse assets, which has been a problem we've talked about for all of these games besides like, what was that 2D one that came out last year? Superstars?
Superstars, yeah.
So that had all new stuff in this, and this does reuse stuff, but at least it's reusing something different for once.
Yeah.
And they try to hide it a little bit, because like I'm sure that all the Radical Highway assets were reused from Speed Highway. They just painted it a different color or whatever. They made some new bridges, but you know, like it's not Chemical Plant again, you know? So I appreciated that. I don't know, like, is this a hot take that I liked this game so much? Because you guys seem more lukewarm on it. Like you liked it, but you didn't like it that
I'm not
much.
lukewarm on it. I thought it was great.
No, I don't know, like, if it says about, like, what I've played this year or what actually kept my attention, but this is probably the closest thing to a game of the year that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Which,
I'd
again,
put
it
up
feels
there.
wild. It's wild because it's not even a, quote, full game, so to speak, but there weren't a lot of games that, like, kept my attention this year, but this was definitely one of them.
My back of the box quote is that it's probably the most fun I've had with a Sonic game in, like, a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least a decade. Well, I don't know. When did Generations come out? It's like,
It was
Yeah, it's been over
2011.
a decade.
I like Sonic Mania too. But the last time I enjoyed a 3D Sonic game in a long time.
Well, where to get started on this one, gentlemen? Do we want to talk about the story or the
Well,
levels?
you know, I'll just kind of, like, say a broad thing.
Okay.
Because I was kind of like writing down notes about how I felt about this game, and it kind of feels like it takes the best ideas for some of the worst received Sonic games.
Mhm.
Like it takes
Yeah.
ideas from Shadow, it takes ideas from Sonic 06, it takes a lot of ideas from Sonic Forces,
Yeah.
runs with them, and kind of shows that those games didn't inherently have bad ideas, just bad execution.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, if you were going to tell
definitely.
me that they were going to take Sunset Heights and turn it into a banger level, well, I wouldn't have believed you. But
Well,
they did
you know,
it.
it's like all the thing with the Phantom Ruby in Sonic Forces that can alter reality, but for some reason they call it virtual reality. I don't get that, but it alters
Yeah.
reality, essentially.
And there are like
And-
no rules to how the
Yeah.
thing works.
And they do some cool stuff with it. I won't say they don't do that, because there's definitely like a handful of levels where they do stuff with it.
Yeah.
But this game kind of shows that, like, okay, yeah, this Sonic Forces flirts with the idea of altering reality, and this game just kind of goes like all in on it. Where you're just running, like you're in the space colony arc, and then all of a sudden you're in Radical Highway, and everything's all bendy and shifty and weird. I love that shit.
It goes all
Yeah,
Inception
I
on
thought that was
you.
awesome.
You know?
I think that one of my favorite things about Sonic transitioning from like 2D to 3D is how they incorporated the level transitions in Adventure 1, and then eventually I feel like they just kind of lost that feeling. And this thing in Shadow Generations is maybe the closest I've seen to doing something like that. Admittedly, and it's all Radical Highway. Oops, it's all Radical Highway. But I think that it's cool that we can have drastic shifts like that mid-level, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah. If I do have anything negative to say about the Black Doom, did Black Doom have space-altering powers in Shadow the Hedgehog? Did I just forget about that?
I mean, like, there were definitely a handful of moments in the game where Black Doom did a thingy and then, we're in Shadow's past now.
Yeah.
And he has to...
That's what I'm assuming they're riffing on, because there's a point where Shadow is teleported into space and then does a level from his past in the arc.
There are a couple levels like
that's
that.
what they're riffing off of.
I always thought that was just taking place inside of his brain, though. Like, I didn't realize he was physically transported to a fake recreation of that.
Well, I mean, who's to say that the levels he's doing here isn't in his brain as well?
I suppose, yeah.
I think the other implication is that I think they might have even said this in the game somewhere, but like Black Doom is taking advantage of the Time Eater's white space.
Yes. He does say that.
So I think that probably has something to do with it as well. I don't know.
Okay. Well, like the only thing I didn't like about, like, apart from the fact that it's always Radical Highway, when you think Black Doom would want to recreate the Black Comet.
Yeah,
instead.
The Black Comet should have been the final level. When they have the black armed soldiers fly out of the orb and you go in and it's just Radical Highway again, it's like, I get what they want to do there. It would have made a lot more sense if it was just the Black Comet. I mean, the thing's a giant orb.
Well, they don't have assets they can repaint to make a level look like the Black Comet, and that's probably why.
What I wanted was a fucking remix of one of my favorite tracks from Shadow the Hedgehog, I think Final Haunt or whatever it is. It's like,
yes.
That's what I really wanted. And Final Haunt is in the game. Thankfully, you can play it in the BGM, but it kind of disappointed me that, because the idea of ending with Radical Highway as like the point at which Shadow began is cool thematically, but it's just kind of, it didn't entirely work for me.
It might have been cooler if all the interludes weren't the same. But apart from that, I wish that you could skip the fake. Like, there are parts where it's like you get control taken away from you when you're going for S ranks or whatever, and you just have to watch a cutscene and you can't skip it.
Yeah, that Tokyo DLC for the movie they did, that one has a lot of that.
Yeah, I just wish that I could skip that, but I guess the reason they don't let you do that is because the timer is running during it. But, you know, I feel like there's a solution to that problem. I mean, it's cool to watch the first couple of times, but, you know, when you're trying to get a new best clear time or whatever, it's kind of annoying. That's my tiny gripe.
I mean, if anything, it's like they could have just made scenes like that more interactive.
Yeah.
You know, quick time events are the easiest way to do that, and this game has like a little bit of that, but I mean, I don't know. I never really had a problem with quick time events in games, so it's like you can just do stuff like that, because at least in that way, you're engaging with the game and not just watching Shadow do stuff. You know?
Yeah.
It would be nice to have it fully interactive, sure, but like if this is the route that we have to go and just, you know, a couple of button prompts that we have to press, that's fine. You can do that.
Well, speaking of Radical Highway, what did we think of the level selection in this game?
Odd.
Yeah.
Very odd.
The designs of them in terms of their layout were all really good, but the choices, I guess this kind of, in some ways, mirrors Generations. Some of the choices are just strange to me.
I don't hate them.
Yeah.
I don't hate them. Like, when I think of Sonic Heroes, I don't, like, you know, Seaside Hill comes to mind, and that's pretty obvious. Radical Train doesn't, though. Radical Train Sonic 06, my bad.
Rail Canyon?
Rail Canyon, excuse me. That one doesn't come to mind.
Yeah, I don't know. Rail Canyon is it's probably the one that I give the side eye the most. I mean, other than the fact that they're including Sonic Frontiers, even though he wasn't there, but I guess they imply he's going to be there, ? I mean, I got over that.
I was going to say Chaos, like, if we're getting a Frontiers stage, Chaos Island is the one that makes me question it the most. That one is the most out of left field for me.
Yes.
Because it's like, I don't know, you could have done the desert, what is that, Ares? And you could have done something with the wyvern. Like, that was a highlight for a lot of people. With Real Canyon, it's like, I don't know, watch the
They
one
should
where,
have
like,
done fucking Egg Fleet. This is the biggest thing about Shadow Generations, and it's not even really that big of a deal, but the fact they had 2 opportunities to make Egg Fleet, and they missed both times, and it really frustrates me.
Yeah.
Like, specifically me, because Egg Fleet is probably, in terms of Sonic stages, in the top 5, if not just 1 for me. Like, I love that stage so much, and the fact that on their second opportunity they didn't do it, I'm a little miffed about it, not gonna lie.
It was a stage.
But they did it with Metal Overlord a little bit, except now you're
and
on
that's
the bottom.
the other jarring thing is that they include Metal Overlord, and there are some rails in there that look like the Egg Fleet rails, but Egg Fleet's not there. Like, come on.
Like, Egg
Now,
Fleet
if
is
they
a
could-
lot.
Egg Emperor in Generations 3DS. Like, are they taunting me? What are they doing?
If Sega and Sonic Team were smart, which they're not always, but sometimes they are. So if they're
It's the most
listening,
polite way you could have said that.
if they were listening, they could do DLC, and they should.
could.
They
They won't.
absolutely should do DLC.
They won't.
They won't, but
I
they
Well,
learned
should.
from
technically
Generations.
they did, because they added the Tokyo level.
They technically did, yeah.
And they technically should do more.
But that's also like they technically added the pinball table to Generations.
So that they could recycle the song that they already put in the
Yeah.
casino park zone in the 3DS one or whatever.
Why is
Yeah.
the last sip of rum always the hardest? I don't know why. It never goes down easy. Ugh. Sorry. But yeah, weird choices aside. I mean, like, Sunset Heights makes sense. I think Kingdom Valley makes sense.
Kingdom Valley is like
it's the best
probably
one.
the pick that I would have picked for 06 anyway,
Yeah.
so that makes sense to me.
Right.
Yeah, that one is also just, I think, the best level in the game.
Oh,
Yeah, Kingdom
definitely.
Valley is my favorite level.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. And really, just the weird ones are just Real Canyon and Chaos Island.
Mhm.
Yeah. Which is kind of odd because actually Chaos Island Act 1 is up there for me in terms of design. I play that level a lot.
That one I found was a slow burn. Once when you
I
learn
didn't
how
like
the
it at first, but once I figured out how the Doom Morph's supposed to work,
Yes.
it became
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
yeah.
Once you realize it rubber bands from whatever position you're in when you let go,
Yeah.
then which they
And that
maybe
thing can
tell you.
slingshot you across the level. It's really fun to fuck around with.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say that Egg Fleet is a level King K loves so much that it made him finally say what he thinks about Sonic Heroes. Yeah.
What's that?
It sucks.
It's communist propaganda.
That is true.
It is.
What about you, Exo? What do you make of the level design and the level selection?
Well, I always thought that Sonic Generations had some pretty pedestrian choices. I don't know how to describe it, but it just seems like,
yeah,
oh,
they're pretty safe.
well,
I guess
we'll take
maybe the best way to put it.
we'll take either the first level in the game or a city level or something
Yeah.
that looks sufficiently city-like. And I don't know if that was just easier to model for, because supposedly there was a survey that they did,
Yeah.
but I'm sure that by the time that survey came out, because I remember voting on it, it was way too far in production for it to actually matter. They just did it as a marketing tactic. But yeah, I just thought a lot of it was lame because it's like really Planet Wisp. Like, that is the lamest level they could have picked from Sonic Colors. Like, any other level would have been better. So, like, compared to that, like, Kingdom Valley was great. Like, I enjoyed Chaos Island as a level, and we all know why it's in there. It's because they could reuse assets from Sonic Frontiers.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I guess anything from Sonic... What the hell is that game? Oh, Shadow the Hedgehog, duh. Any level from that game, they would have had to make new assets. Like, it just really sucks, just as a side point. Like, supposedly Frontiers did well, and it sucks that they still aren't giving these games the budget that they deserve, that they have to reuse assets. Like, I appreciate that they were willing to repaint them this time and not just have levels take place in Chemical Plant in cyberspace or whatever, because that's just what they had laying around.
Technically, the Metal Overlord
I did hear
I think
about this,
reuses
yes.
the chemical plant assets, which is funny.
Which
It
is why the
does.
level doesn't look anything like it's supposed to, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I appreciate that they were at least willing to repaint it.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why it is that these games are still being budgeted. I appreciate all the work that they've done despite that, try to make the best game they can, but it just kind of sucks that we're still in a place after Rise of Lyric bombed that they can't give these games even a little more money.
Yeah.
In this case, it's like a pack-in title for Generations port to modern systems, but still, I really hope that whatever game that comes next, they up the budget so that we don't have to have Chemical Plant show up again. Regardless, I did think it was weird that there were no shadow levels. I didn't have a problem with Rail Canyon. I thought that was fine as like a second level. I mean, like I would have rather have seen, what's the spooky level again? Hung Castle?
Yeah.
Or Mystic Mansion. Like that would have been cool.
Mystic
like
Mansion would be my second choice.
See, my pick for a heroes level would be the fucking Bingo Highway.
Oh, that would have also been
that'd be
fun.
cool as well.
Because like the casino theme has always been like a staple for Sonic, and Sonic Generations, excluding the 3DS version, we don't have like any casino representation at all.
Have you guys ever played that game?
3DS?
Yeah, the 3DS Generations.
Yeah,
Yeah, I played it.
I replayed it just for stock footage because I needed footage of the Biomoose for the playthrough, and I replayed it and I was just like, wow, this game is terrible. Like, I know that they
it's neat. I mean, I'm never gonna play it again, but it's neat.
Yeah, I mean it's a novelty, I guess. I don't know.
That's kind of how I've always viewed it as like, it's not really anything that I'd want to play again. But it is kind of a novelty to see what stages they chose.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like that Emerald Coast Act 1 is just awful.
I don't like any of the Act 1s. I like some of the Act 2s, but do not like how Classic Sonic feels or how any of his levels are designed, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of level design, it's hard to pin down exactly what it is that they're doing in this game that they have not been doing, besides opening up more pathways and shortcuts and stuff, because that was the problem
I think
with...
the way I have described it is that this feels the most similar to how the adventure style games were designed while it's still having a boost.
Yeah.
You can kind of see it in Kingdom Valley where like that level looks a lot like Kingdom Valley looked in 06 in terms of the branching paths that it has. And even though this is still a boost game, the way that I can describe it is that I love it because it kind of feels like the lost Adventure Sonic that Generations never got in a really weird way.
Oh,
at least
I
the
see what you
Act
mean.
1s do. Because the way that I play those levels is a lot more freeform than the way I would play the Generations boost levels. Like if you compare those two directly, there are a lot of differences, like the fact that Shadow doesn't control like a tank, so you can actually float around and do some platforming, and the levels can be broken a lot like the adventure games could with like chaos spear gliding and shit like that. And so I kind of got those same vibes of like playing the adventure games or PO6 or whatever, like that kind of spark I haven't seen from the series in a while since the boost, in my opinion, got driven into the ground with each successive game that it was reused in, to the point where I don't know why it's still here, to be honest, but I mean that's neither here nor there. That's an entirely separate conversation.
The boost itself?
Yeah. Especially with levels that are designed like this and they're not... The thing I liked about the boost in like Unleashed, and maybe even in Generations, was how it felt like the levels were very narrow and linear, and especially in Unleashed, you had to make some split-second decisions almost all the time. They were like rhythm games, I guess is the best way to put it.
Sure.
And that's where I feel like the boost worked really well. But when you start expanding them out, it starts to make a little bit less sense to me to have a boost, because my main form of enjoyment for Shadow Generations anyway is how much platforming there is.
It's interesting because if anything, I would say that this focuses less on platforming than some of the other games, but I'm sure that's not what you meant. Maybe like that 3D aspect of the platforming where like Kingdom Valley is a good example of this, where like you have multiple different levels of pathways that they're all kind of pointing in the same direction, but you can jump off to the side.
That's exactly what I mean.
And activate one of those hidden air rail things. Like that was a lot of fun.
But Another example I have is Rail Canyon was a level I was worried about because I hate how rail grinding works in the boost games a lot because they're all basically the same section, more or less. They just kind of turn rail grinding into quick step sections. And
Yes.
while there is a bit of that in Rail Canyon, the thing that I was impressed about is there's several sections in Rail Canyon where there's a bunch of paths, and when you get the Doom Wings power up, you can kind of just there are sections you can skip, but also sections you can chaos control through with those little shortcuts. And I think that it adds this dynamic of you could stay on the lower path and do the quick time events, or you can do some sick shit and skip all of it. That's why I say that it reminds me a lot of the adventure games, because I do that all the time in Speed Highway, for example, in Adventure 1, or a lot of that stuff can be done in Adventure 2 and Radical Highway. If you jump a certain way, you can get on the rails of the bridge rails and stuff like that. And that's the kind of ethos I feel like the boost games, it was hard to allow for that in the boost games because of how fucking fast you were going, and the camera was shoved up your ass. So it was basically more of a quick time event rhythm-y game where about quick reaction timing, which I think is valid in its own right. But I prefer the kind of Sonic game that Shadow Generations is, and I think that we're slowly getting there with that. And Frontiers. I'll give Frontiers some credit. Shadow Generations made me appreciate a lot more about that game.
In what way?
So that was surprising.
Well, it's even the ways in how chaos control is used, where it's you use that just the right time, and you can use in Sunset Heights, you got the giant egg robot throwing debris, and if you time it just right, you can use that debris as an extra path to get to a higher route. Or in Rail Canyon, you can use chaos control to stop the rhino, whatever they're called, the little things that are chasing you.
Yeah.
You can actually get ahead of them before they blow up the rails and get to a new path and everything like that. A lot of people talk about the Doom Wings, but I think Chaos Control is probably the best power that Shadow has in this game, because it really shows that the levels are well thought out. I feel as if they haven't been this creative since Sonic Generations, or at least they haven't been this experimental.
Creative,
you could approach these levels in 3 or 4 different ways, and it's never not satisfying.
Yeah, I think Chaos Control is really well utilized as a mechanic in a way that, for instance, Shadow the Hedgehog, it was kind of you just skipped the game.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that they've reincorporated that into a mechanic that would make more sense for a platformer. But, they still have the sound effect from Shadow the Hedgehog, which I appreciate.
The one where you're
a smirk.
The one from the digital circuit level where you're on the lines. Yeah.
I thought that was cute.
It's I never really did much with the Doom Wings, admittedly. I didn't really do much.
I did a lot with the Doom Wings.
Oh, I remember. I watched you play. That shit was so cool.
I think the Doom Wings is my favorite super form they have ever made.
Yeah?
Because it's not just a super form, it's a completely different movement option. Now, granted, when I learned about spear gliding, I didn't use Doom Wings as much because it's basically a better version of what the Doom Wings does. But spear gliding was not intended, so I'm not going to knock it against the game. But the Doom Wings, there's the super form in P06, which is the fan remake of 06. When you turn into Supersonic, it lets you do an air dash. And I always thought that was the sickest shit ever because that opens up a lot of platforming opportunities. The Doom Wings is that on crack because it's an air glide that lasts as long as your boost gauge does. And it's really fun to figure out ways. In Rail Canyon is maybe my favorite use, where you can skip the entire middle chunk of the level if you store a Chaos Control capsule, because Chaos Control will refill your boost gauge, which means that you get an entire new section in the air while you're already flying, because it refills your boost gauge from empty. And doing timing shit like that, it was why I speed ran a lot of these levels. Not so much the Act 2 levels. I don't think they're bad or anything, but they were fun enough. But I was more into the 3D levels because I haven't seen 3D Sonic levels that have been this fun in quite a while, and that was kind of novel.
Yeah, the 2D levels kind of felt like an obligation because Generations had the Act 1 and the Act 2, which were the 3D and 2D, and it just kind of felt as if it was just doing what that game did because, it's Generations. We have to do what that game did, so... Yeah. They were fine.
Yeah, if they were gonna have 2D levels, I guess I prefer the ones like these, which are faster paced. I guess they feel a little bit more like the Boost design.
Yeah.
They were fun.
I did not like them.
Yeah, they're all right.
Much like the film Solo, A Star Wars Story, it was thoroughly okay.
I wouldn't know. I don't watch garbage.
Oh.
Oh.
I was gonna try to come up with a slick comeback, but I don't know what you watch that we haven't seen. So
Ha!
you win this round, Ryan.
And I'll win the next one too. Just you wait.
Well, maybe we should play the fan fiction game next time and see if you win that.
Yeah, we totally should.
All right. Well, and we were going to do a game show this year, but we didn't get around to it because stuff got busy.
Yep. I was supposed to make the questionnaire, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is something I could revisit.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed.
Well, King K still has to make us our Kingdom Hearts trivia question set.
Why? Completely forgot this was an obligation of mine.
Well, we had talked about it at least, but you're the Kingdom Hearts lore master, so I can think of no one more qualified to come up with a series of questions for us to answer for the enjoyment of our audience. All right. We've talked about the levels, so obviously the bosses are the other interesting thing that you played in this video game. So let's talk about those real quick.
You know, I respect this game for having the cojones to put Mephiles back in a game.
Yeah.
I respect the hell. I mean, like, are we reusing shit over and over and over again? Like, we've been doing this since 2010 with Sonic 4. 2024, we're going on to 2025, we're still doing this shit. But there's something different about, like, you compare it to, like, reusing Green Hill versus bringing back the devil in the Sonic universe. It's a little different, you know? So it's like, while it is, like...
I appreciated it, yeah.
You know, you said this before, where it's a little bit different because, like, it's stuff that we haven't seen before, like, or it's stuff that we haven't seen in years. It is still member berries, but, like, at the same time, like,
it's not the same member berries that have gone stale by now.
Yeah.
Well, they haven't used the Mephiles member berry 5 fucking times
Exactly.
in a row.
Yes.
It's wild that they would pull ideas like that. Because, like,
well, not only do they pull Mephiles, I think that they use him in a fucking badass way. Like, his ending line is some of the rawest writing I've seen from Sonic in quite a while. Like, it is pretty sick.
Did you even call it rad?
Yeah, and it's a tasteful reference too, because the only time you could bring back Mephiles is in, like, a Generations time travel adventure, you know? Like, that's basically the only time you can do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, you know, it's like, I want to kind of, like, pivot a little bit to the writing in this game, because, like, you compare the writing in this, and then you compare it to the rewrite they did in Generations. And I guess for a little bit of context, years and years and years ago, I made a video about why I was kind of, like, disinterested in the future of Sonic, and I said they should bring Ian Flynn to write for the games. I said that.
Yeah.
And I don't regret saying that, because Ian Flynn is a very good writer, you know?
Yeah, I would agree, honestly, yeah.
And he knows
like
his
him.
stuff.
Yes.
And, you know, I like that we have him on board, because, like, in Sonic Frontiers, we have times where, you know, characters are sitting down and they actually have conversations. I can appreciate that. You know, there's a bit in this game at the very end where Shadow sheds a single tear while he's letting go of Maria and Gerald. It's like, oh, okay, wow, that's tasteful and that's interesting.
That version of Gerald presumably is from before he tried to do that.
That's okay. That's one way to symbolize that.
So it's like he knows his stuff, yet he insists on. It kind of feels like when you know someone who's, like, really smart, but they have to try to sell you on the fact that they're really smart when they don't have to. When
In terms of the knowing about
it's like,
Sonic
oh,
stuff.
hey, Sonic, this looks like the thing that we saw on West Side Island. Do you remember that song? Do you remember? I know my stuff. It's like you don't gotta do that.
Green Hill's looking a lot more like Sand Hill.
Well, and I think that the Shadow Generations portion of that is proof to me that he's really good at what he does when he isn't bogged down by that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or, alternatively, when that sort of thing makes a lot more sense for the story you're trying to tell. And I think Shadow as a character has always been defined by his past, so it makes a lot of sense
For sure.
for him to write a story revolving around things from the past. And that's, I think, why it felt a lot more natural to me than it does in, like, Frontiers, or even the way they rewrote Generations, which is just very strange.
Well, why don't you tell me a little more about that, because I only played the Generations port for about an hour or so.
It's like so all of the cutscene animation is the same, which means that they had to revoice. Not only did they have to rewrite the lines, they had to make lines that would fit in the time bubble of the cutscenes.
Thanks, Sonic. You did a good job back there. Hey, did you gain weight?
Thanks, Sonic. Now then, tell me, where is the rest of my island?
And at that point, I honestly don't know why they even bothered, because the things that they changed are very minor things that would like make Generations fit in with the lore better, quote unquote, which I don't even know how Generations contradicted that to begin with.
Isn't there a
But
part?
it's like, I think they changed a few of the references to different references and then added they added a reference to the fucking time stones or something. Like Sonic was like, but we can time travel without the time stones, and it's shit like that that I despise about the way Ian Flynn writes,
Yeah.
that I don't really feel like bled into Shadow Generations very much at all.
Well, why did? Because here's my thing. Like I said, I only played the port for an hour. I know that primarily the point of it is that it's a bare bones port of Generations, but it's at least a way to play it on new hardware, so you don't have to dig out. Aside from the PC version that existed up to this point, it was a way to not have to dig out your 360 or PS3 to play this game if you're a console gamer. That's cool, and at least it's not a hack job like Colors Ultimate was. They didn't give it to bumfuck nobody games to port.
Yeah, it's a good, like in terms of how the stages play, pretty much just the game.
Yeah, it works.
But my thing is, obviously, I've done a show about trying to, when you re-release a game, trying to make it the best version of that game that you can. And what I don't understand is they were willing to re-record and rewrite all of the dialogue in this game, but they couldn't even take out the homing shot thing, where they say homing shot every 5 seconds, right? And they could add chow, but like, there's not a lot to fix with Sonic Generations.
Well, and that's what makes the changes they do make feel even worse, because it's so obvious the stuff you'd want to change. And like, I guess they change everybody's lines at the end, so Shadow no longer says you got this, Sonic. Instead, he says like
On your feet, Sonic.
or something, which I guess is better. But I think the problem with the line to begin with was that it was just really weirdly delivered.
Yes.
And I don't think that improves when you change the line at all. Like, it's a cool line, I guess, but I don't know. It's just bizarre. You know, I wouldn't even say it's like horrible. It's just why
did they bother?
Yeah.
What was the point?
It doesn't bode well. I mean, I don't know if I'm like looking too deep into this, but like I can't help but think of the frog in the boiling pot of water, where it's like, okay, it's like the story in Sonic Generations is pretty inconsequential, right? So it's like, okay, well, why would you complain? Why would you raise a make a fuss about it? Let's say we ignored it in Generations. What if they decided to remake something like Sonic Heroes and they changed the story in that game, or they changed the writing in that game to be more of Ian's style, and it doesn't really work for that game? Or what if they did this for Sonic Adventure 1 or Sonic Adventure 2? Or if they did this for Sonic Unleashed, games that had like more of a focus on story. It just, I don't like that, and I don't think they should be doing this kind of stuff, personally.
To be fair, I would say that the only way to remake Sonic Adventure 1 specifically would be a full tilt reimagining.
Yeah, that's the only way I could even, because at this point, you can't really go halfway with it. You just port the game or you remake the entire thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that if they remade all of those playstyles, like if they did a straight up traditional remake, that it would work, because a lot of stuff about that game hasn't aged well. No offense, Ryan.
You're rude.
But I also think that the only reason they even did this is because they wanted Shadow Generations to take place concurrently with Generations.
Yeah.
And in a way that would conflict with things that happened in Generations, I guess. That's why they added the whole ass scene in Shadow Generations with Sonic in it.
Yeah.
Which is a bit bizarre. But
that Chaos Emerald and I have a date with a monster.
Yeah, and see, that's the thing. That was the only time in Shadow Generations where I was reminded of the key jingling again, which is strange because the entire game is key jingling, but I guess, as you said, it's like tasteful about it, and it wraps it into a story where it actually makes sense to be looking into the past, because that's what the whole thing's about. So it makes scenes like that where he's talking with Sonic feel even more jarring to watch.
Or they just recite lines from Heroes and Adventure almost word for word.
They don't feel like characters when they start. They're quoting popular lines, and it's like, can you just talk like normal fucking people?
I feel like I would like that scene a lot more if it didn't reuse so much dialogue.
Yeah.
Like if it had if they were actually talking like actual characters and not just pulling up bullshit from the past, I would like that scene a lot more because it's genuinely a fun scene.
Yeah.
Like in terms of like the way how like the characters are animated, the way how they're expressing and everything like that, it's fun. But it's kind of ruined when it's just like, hey, remember this thing? Do you remember? It's a different kind of member berry, you know?
Yeah.
So much member berries.
It's just obnoxious.
Yeah. I
I will say though that I am glad that we have animated cutscenes again.
Oh yeah.
It's quite nice.
Yeah,
It's
you
quite
mean
nice to see them moving around.
Yeah, it looks great.
you don't prefer people standing in place and gesticulating with their arms?
Yeah, well, that's the thing too, is that I think Frontiers' story would have gone down a lot better for me if it had the kind of animation that Shadow Gens does.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I do still like a lot of the ideas they were going for in that story. It's just for a lot of the cutscene duration, I was really bored of it.
Well, yeah, that especially came clear to me on a second playthrough. Like nothing happens until the last island. Like so much of it is filler, which is fine because I enjoy the gameplay. But it's like if you're in your position where you didn't like the gameplay as much, then it just becomes like a slog.
Yeah.
Yeah, whoever the director was for this game, they need to get him on board with the more, I guess, like the
Yeah,
it
main
was
series.
a different person. I don't remember who it is, but I think he worked, or at least there was level designers that worked on Generations levels. I know that.
Yeah.
Yes, let this
I think
design
left the series after Generations or something like that, or shortly after. I don't know, but he came back for this.
If I remember,
Let-
I think they actually
yeah.
worked on Mario Odyssey,
Huh.
which is kind of poetic.
Yeah.
I guess we didn't finish talking about the bosses.
Oh yeah, bosses.
I was gonna say, speaking of the open-ended levels in Mario Odyssey, what about the open zone?
You know, this is the thing about Shadow Gens that made me appreciate Frontiers more, is the open zone in Shadow Gens. It
Yes.
it clicked in my brain when I was running around in the Shadow Gens open zone,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, if you just tweak it a little bit, the Frontiers open zones, which were already my favorite part of the game, could be fucking sick. Like if they were to keep doing it, which I think they probably are.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Shadow Gens, it was a lot smaller, it was more collectible dense, and those collectibles meant a lot more to me.
Yes.
And I was like, oh shit, like it all clicked into place, and I ran around fucking around with Shadow's moveset a lot more, and I was like, I get it now. And I've been describing it to people as like, now I kind of view the pipeline of Frontiers to Shadow Gens the same way that I view the like SA1 to SA2 pipeline, where SA1 was like really rough in a lot of ways, but it was doing some sick shit with Sonic. And I kind of look at Frontiers that way now, where there's a lot about that game I really don't like. But the heart of it, after playing Shadow Gens, I see the heart now. Like, I get it. I understand it.
Yeah.
And I think that they've got something good here. And I'm glad that they're making meaningful changes to it and keeping it going.
Instead
And
of
we can
throwing
actually
it out.
see them foster it into something good.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it has like the core game loop of Frontiers was you need to get special gears to open up the cyberspace levels so you could get keys to unlock the vaults or something like that, which means that everything is just focused around progression. Whereas with this game, the core game loop is, okay, you can find the equivalent of red star rings in the levels and then use them to unlock chests in the overworld. So like there's more of an interplay between those two. So it's like, okay, that encourages you to actually go back to levels you've already played and find the other keys so that you can unlock more music and stuff or more art to view in the gallery. So I thought that the interplay between those was really cool, and I'd like to see that come back in future games, because it's like once you get enough keys for the vaults, you really don't need to play those cyberspace levels again. You don't really need to play most of them, actually, which I guess is a benefit because they're the worst part of the game.
Well, yeah, that's the thing too, is that like I look back on Frontiers and I'm like, what if those cyberspace levels were as good as the levels in Shadow Gens?
Yeah.
I think maybe I would have been a lot less down on that game, because I think that would have, the thing about cyberspace for me was that it was constantly disrupting the flow, and I didn't. That was like a half of the game that I just did not like engaging with at all. And this made me think like, well, actually that structure isn't bad. It's just how they did it, because in here I thought it was great. I had like equal time in and out of levels.
And as far as like the design of the hub itself, like you said, it's more dense. It's smaller physically than all of the islands in Frontiers. you actually have like set pieces and sections to play, or like you climb up towers and stuff, which I'm thinking back to Frontiers, and it doesn't really have a lot of that. A lot of it's just kind of open space to pick up things, and there are those floating diamond islands you play at points, but that was kind of the closest. Most of those were just rails. So yeah, it's like what I said about Tears of the Kingdom, where like having discrete sections to explore, like the caves, makes open world games more fun to play, in my opinion. Because this game has more of a rigid progression than that does, but it's it still gives you like, oh, do I go into this underground well area, or do I go and climb up the tower, or do I explore the watery area, or do I try to play those Frontiers mini sections? Like, there's more choice and freedom, and like making it smaller also helps, and only having one hub helps as well in terms of like replay value, and that it's actually conceivable to memorize where everything is and try to do it quickly. Whereas like, I don't think there's any way I'm getting all of the memory tokens in Frontiers without that map. There's just no way. So
yeah, as somebody who's fully completed both games, had a lot more fun doing it in Shadow Gens.
So I mean, I have weird feelings about the hub area in Shadow Gens, honestly.
Okay.
The weird dichotomy between Frontiers and Gens is that I genuinely loved the open zone stuff in Frontiers, and I hated the cyberspace stuff.
Right.
And I genuinely loved the levels in Shadow Gens, but I did not really care that much for the, quote, open zone in this game. And I need to sit on this a bit more, because I don't know if I can articulate as to why that is, but I know a lot of it definitely has to do with the fact that aesthetically it is very boring.
That is true.
Yeah.
And when I think about something like Sonic Frontiers, it's like I felt like there was always something in these zones that was kind of like grabbing my attention. I mean, whether it was like a weird like floating structure, or whether it was a giant boss or something. I would always be like, oh, hey, there's a thing I can go do. I'm gonna go do that real quick. When in Gens, it was more like, what do I need to do in order to get to the next level ASAP? To where I would kind of like avoid doing a lot of the side stuff in the open zone. Like I wouldn't go out of my way to like explore to try to find like the different chests. I didn't do a lot of the little optional challenges, which a lot of them were just like collect X amount of rings.
Yeah.
Like, are there different ones, or
there are these really annoying time trial ones too.
Yeah.
No, they're all pretty simple, yeah.
I don't know, like I never felt like compelled to like do these challenges, when it's like, why would I be doing that when I could try to be getting a better time in like Sunset Heights or Kingdom Valley or something?
Yeah, that's fair.
You
but
know?
I have
I guess
one question for you. I guess you can go real quick.
Oh, I was just saying, like, if anything, like, that kind of just gives a lot of credit to the actual level design in this game.
Yes, indeed.
But I think, like, maybe a perfect marriage would be having levels like Shadow Gens, but also having, like, the kind of scope. And I don't know how people feel about the combat in Sonic Frontiers, but I liked it a lot, and I don't want them to throw that aside.
Yeah.
I would rather
You
them
don't
try
want
to,
them
like,
to
focus that up.
throw it all away.
I would not want them to throw it all away. No! I'd want them to do more with it, because like that was a lot of the fun for me, was fighting the giant like fuck ass monsters and shit. Like I thought that was really cool.
Are you saying that you enjoyed the
like
mini bosses in Final Horizon?
Maybe not in Final Horizon, but in the base game, sure. I liked a lot of them.
Okay.
Nice try,
I
though.
think something they could do, honestly, with Open Zone is that they could make the bridges between the Open Zone and the actual levels less arbitrary. I think that might help a lot, too.
Yeah.
At least I would enjoy it more. Like, you can still have a loading zone if you want, but I think we don't need to be going through fucking portals. It feels like really disconnected from everything that's going on in the Open Zone.
Well, the thing is, too, is that in Frontiers, there were parts in some of these islands that acted as, like, traditional levels, It's like, I'm thinking about, like there's, like, a couple of, like, floating platforms that, like, would lead to a Chaos Emerald Vault that would essentially be its own level, And in, funny enough, in Chaos Island, there's like the floating pyramid thing with a bunch of grind rails and loop-de-loops and stuff like that. You have to go there in order to get a Chaos Emerald, but they don't use that in Shadow Gens. You see it, but you don't ever go there. That's wild to me. So it's like, it shows that like you can do it, but Frontiers just didn't. It flirted with the idea, but didn't really like elaborate on it.
Yeah, and I guess in that sense, Shadow Gens doesn't really take that aspect of the open zones much anywhere, probably because it's so fucking small. But I think we could be in for more of a marriage between the two, a bigger scope. I think really the problems with the open zone of Shadow Gens is really just that the scope of the game's not very big.
Yes.
So this is like all that's there, and I don't know. I didn't really mind it because I guess it fit with the scope of the game, but I understand a lot of it can feel like obligatory, especially the way that they kind of, when you get dumped out of a level, they do the fucking Generations thing where they're like, okay, now you have to do these shitty challenge acts.
Yeah.
And that makes it feel more obligatory than like, let me just run around the cool space.
Well, if I remember right, you only had to play like one challenge per zone in the original Generations, right?
Yeah.
So in this one, they're like, you have to play like 2. Well, you literally have to play all of them to get the Mephiles.
Yeah, you have to play all of them in Shadow Gens, if I remember.
Yeah,
eventually.
It's fine. I mean, like, the thing is with, like, there were some really bad ones in Generations, but I found the ones in Shadow Gens I didn't think were as offensive as some of the ones in regular Generations.
Like the vector singing challenge?
Yeah.
That's the only one I can remember right now.
There was one with Rouge, and she was, like, batting eyes at robots and stuff.
Oh, there was one where you had to carry Knuckles around and he'd dig up coins.
Yeah. There was another one where SBO would like try to assault you and he would turn invisible and you have to like try to whack him or something.
But see, that's the thing about the challenge acts in Gens is that even if a lot of them I didn't want to play necessarily, I was also like, okay, I kind of see what you're doing here because you're like giving the Sonic friends something to do, even if a lot of it didn't really work too well.
Yeah.
But in the case of Shadow Gens, I'm like, are you really just doing this because it was in Generations? Because it just doesn't make a lot of sense here. I guess you're reusing the stage assets and stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't have as much of a problem with the challenge stages either, but I also have not touched them at all since I was forced to do them, which kind of says to me maybe they shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't that down on them, but that was also because this is a long story. I'm going to guess that you guys have not seen our fabulous playthrough of this game on the Game Mavericks.
No.
I can't say that I have.
So
Why are we playing a Saniku game?
This isn't a Sonic game. This is John Wick 1.5.
Uh-oh. I masturbated too many times today.
Well, we ran into a recording issue that I've spent the better part of a month trying to fix. I won't bore you with all the details, Mr. President, because I know you're a very busy man, but the gist of it was I ended up replaying the first half, 2/3 of this game really, like 4 times, trying to get the recording issues to fix, and the challenges grew on me because I had to play them multiple times. I'm like, yeah, these aren't so bad. I mean, it is fun to ass rank some of them. My only complaint really is that they're called challenges, but they really aren't challenging at all, aside from the hard mode ones that you unlock in the Doom Zone, but they're only like half of those compared to the regular ones. So, you know, it would be nice, because like with a lot of them, they practically hand out the S rank to you, so even though there's some really cool shortcuts in some of them, so that's my only complaint there.
You know what did work for me is how the bosses were designed.
There we go. We're back,
This
baby.
is only the 3rd time we've tried to talk about the bosses.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll actually do it this time.
Or maybe we'll wait till the Game of the Year podcast to say what we think about the bosses.
I
think Metal Overlord really reminded me a lot of Fred Flintstone.
in Dinosaur X Shadow Generation.
In Shadow X Generations, A Dinosaur Story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's
I
like
think
a
these
Solo, a
bosses-
Star Wars story, but it's about dinosaurs.
Yeah. The bosses were good, damn it. They were good.
This is like the inverse of Sonic Heroes, where King really wants to talk about the game.
I like, especially coming off Gens. Which I guess I wouldn't say Gens had like horrible boss fights.
I
but
thought
like,
Gens had pretty good bosses, honestly.
Apart from the last one.
well, I think that it had a few fun bosses, and the rest I just don't really care for. Like, I mean, Time Eater obviously, but like,
Time Eater sucks,
I really
yeah.
don't like Egg Dragoon at all.
Really?
If I'm gonna be honest.
Interesting.
The Death Egg robot, I don't know if I've just played the game too many times, but I can kill him so fast that he may as well not be a boss.
Right.
So, I don't know, that one's very underwhelming for me. So really, like, I'm left with, like, Perfect Chaos is pretty cool.
And the rival fights I
And-
thought were pretty neat. Like, I really
I
enjoyed
mean-
the Metal Sonic fight.
I like them in theory. The Metal Sonic one is probably the one that works the most for me mechanically, and then the Shadow one I just don't like, and the Silver one is okay, I guess.
Oh.
I mean, I think they're cool to be rival fights at all. I just don't really know that I like how they work necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Thing about Shadow Gens that I really, really like is that all of them have like optimal strategies.
Yeah.
Like the closest thing you could have to a shortcut in a boss, which kind of reminds me a little bit of Sonic Heroes, but like a little bit more considered, we'll say. Where in Sonic Heroes, the bosses kind of suck ass, but like you can also kill them in 5 seconds, most of them anyway, if you just like get level 3 power or something and beat the shit out of them. And Shadow Gens reminds me of that, but it's like baked into the design itself where like, you know, you were talking about how chaos control is like a cool mechanic in this game earlier.
Yeah.
And I think in the boss fights, it's shown off to its greatest potential where in the Metal Overlord fight specifically, I remember this, I will always remember this. I was messing around with it. You can get some shortcuts in the lead up to its second phase, like with light trails and stuff if you farm up enough of it. And you basically need to do this to get the S rank.
Yeah.
So I was like, why is this S rank so fucking hard? And it's because
good. It wasn't
in
just
phase
me.
2, when he's dropping the projectiles, you have to save your chaos control for that, because if you hit 5 of them in the air while chaos control is going, you get a secret cutscene where you basically kill him like early.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that was awesome. Like that gave me a rush. It was like the bosses are puzzles to solve. It was crazy.
Really? That's what you're
I don't know.
supposed
I
to
think
do
that's like
to get the S? Because I didn't get that
Yeah.
cutscene, and I did use chaos control
in
early.
phase 2 in the 2D section when he's dropping the ships. Like
Oh,
the big
you're talking about
ships
that
you can
part.
homing attack.
Right. I did get that one. I thought you were saying that there was a different one towards the middle of the boss, like in that first section where you're chasing him.
Yeah, there's not necessarily a cutscene in the middle, but there are chaos control trails that you can
Yes,
take,
I found those.
which serve a similar function in terms of shortcutting. But all the bosses have something like this. The Biolizard has it the least, because really the only thing you can do is that during a certain phase, you can stop time, stomps one foot
Yep.
down, and then quickly takes it up and does another. And if you use chaos control with good timing, you can just get his first foot and shave like 10 or 15 seconds off.
Yep.
And I think that kind of design works perfectly for Sonic in terms of boss fights, in a series where I feel like boss fights are really hit or miss.
Yeah,
most
that's
of the
being
games.
generous.
And I thought that they pretty much all worked here because they were all of them designed with that mentality.
Yeah, it's like I'm thinking back to like there's some pretty bad bosses in Lost World, but like even in like Colors, it's like okay, you run after the blimp and you homing attack it repeatedly, and then in like Forces, the bosses just kind of felt there.
The bosses and Forces
Yeah.
sucked. The bosses and Forces sucked.
It just feels like this is the first time in a very long time that they've really thought these out instead of, it almost felt kind of like obligatory in a lot of the recent games, apart from something like Mania, and they're not overly long like Superstars was. You know, because like I remember talking about that when we did our 2023 podcast about how I liked how some of the bosses in Superstars had like, you know, if you get them in a good rhythm or find the special secondary weak point, you can beat them faster. And that's pretty much what all of these are, or they have like intended the boss version of a skip essentially.
Yeah.
Which is basically what you were saying, but yeah, like I agree completely that this is an approach that works really well for Sonic. I'd like to see it going forward because, yeah, I don't. What other game would even compare as far as bosses go in this series? Even just 3D.
Not to jerk this game off more, but I mean, Frontiers had a little bit of stuff like that.
In what way? I'm curious about this.
There were a few times where, like, if you would do the Psy loop or the quick Psy loop against some of the bosses, it would tie them down, and you do like double damage.
Yeah, I see that.
There were a couple of times.
I remember in Night you can Psy loop him his sword or something like. I know what you're talking about. That did occur.
There's also like the part when you're on his shield and the missiles are getting like tossed at you. You can actually skip that just by jumping off the shield, and you'll just like teleport right in front of the guy's face, and you can just wail on him some more.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe they weren't like God of War tier, but like I still thought they were like pretty, as far as Sonic bosses are concerned, they were pretty creative.
I mean, honestly, since the series has such a low batting average, I probably agree with that.
you got second place in a field full of 5-year-olds.
They had some of the best boss music I've ever heard, so I'll give them that too.
I played the hard version of Mephiles with, what the hell is the first one called? Why am I bad at remembering things? The Giganto theme. It's not Breakthrough at all, it's the other one.
Undefeatable.
That's it. Yeah, and that was
I got you.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of the boss music, I have a hot take for you that I'd like to share in the chat. That I saw someone post on Bluesky.com. Let's see if you all agree, because I've never played this game.
Unfortunately, the Shadow Gen's version of supporting me is like the Final Fantasy VII, I don't know if that's rebirth or remake, version of the song, if that makes any sense. I don't understand.
I mean, like, yes, but that's also a good thing. So yeah, I agree with them. But yeah, like I'm saying, that I think that's a good thing, because for anything I could say about those games have kick-ass soundtracks.
Well, I guess we're gonna hear the great King K rant about Rebirth during the GOTY podcast, so I can't wait.
I didn't love the final boss in this game.
Interesting.
I didn't love it. I mean, I did it once, and I said I didn't really care for that much, and I didn't go back to it. So, maybe I missed something, but like, I don't know. It felt kind of sloppy. Am I wrong?
It felt sloppy when I first did it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that you would love it if you played it again, but I think that's the boss I played the most when I was learning how to do it.
Devil Doom?
And it is really fucking satisfying when you get it all down.
Yeah.
Especially the Doom Morph section. And you can like rocket past it all. It's really cool.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little short, because the second phase of it just feels like a victory lap if you do it all correctly. It honestly feels like it was unintentionally quick. But
I mean,
I thought it was cool.
I mean, I was gonna say my least favorite boss was Mephiles.
Wow, that's rude.
He probably, I love that they brought him back, and I love that he's a boss fight, and I think he's a good fight, but if I had to pick a least favorite, it probably would be the Mephiles fight, because it has the least going on.
Also have to say, the voice actor they picked for Mephiles sounds way too sexy to be Mephiles.
Speaking of sexy voices, I can't really comment on the voice acting in this game, or the English voice acting in this game, because I decided to play this game in Espanol.
I was going to be saying Japanese.
En
in
Espanol.
Spanish. I want to hear what they sound like in Spanish.
Puede que Geralt le haya dado una forma modesta, pero la sangre de los Blacktarns fluye por sus venas.
Let me tell you, hearing Shadow say Maria, it is something.
Los aplastaré a todos.
Shadow, no!
Maria?
Well, I, good sir, played it in Japanese, so I can't. I mean, I've heard the English voice acting. I checked it out. Since Mephiles' Japanese voice actor is the same one that he is in 06,
Love that.
It worked for me.
I fucking love that shit, dude.
The Japanese voices have been consistent, with the exception of Eggman, I think, who died.
I think it's the same with Big, isn't it?
Yeah, there have been a few deaths, but everybody that has been around is still around for Sonic on the Japanese side.
I love that shit.
Well, since I'm the only one who actually played this game in English, they got...
I mean, I eventually did play it in English, but I don't remember it as well as the JP.
Yeah, they got Akechi and Chai's voice actor to play Mephiles.
I will defeat you, then restore myself to the timeline. Anyone see the guy that did this?
Oh, yeah, I guess they did, now that you mention it.
It's like,
I knew it sounded familiar.
And, like I said, I think he has a sexy voice. It just doesn't fit Mephiles at all.
I mean, Mephiles is kind of sexy.
Nah, it's hard to beat Dan Green. That was some good shit. Every line he said was, he had the silver tongue like the devil.
Oh, how ironic fate can be. I would never have believed I would be resurrected through your shade.
Just as a tree grows from a seed and a chicken hatches from an egg, everything has an origin.
A Sonic origin.
Oh no! But the boss itself just kind of felt like, you were saying that Black Doom felt sloppy. I'm gonna say that this one felt like it was kind of making itself up as it went along, not in a good way.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to quantify, but I didn't particularly think the Doom Morph stuff was all that fun. I liked climbing up the pillar. That was kind of cool, but the boss is focused around Doom Morph, and the hard mode fight, Aster was telling me it wasn't that different, but there are no rings in the hard mode Mephiles fight. So it's like you get to that third phase where he makes the giant shadow golem come out of the goo and has the shield. Everything is easy leading up to that point until you get to that part, and you basically have to try to finagle getting into the shield, and it's like you get hit once, you die, and then you have to do the whole thing over again. Actually, I think there's a checkpoint, but I mean S rank wise.
Do you use chaos control during that?
I did, but I saved it for the third phase. Like, I ended up realizing it's best to save it for the third one so you can get rid of the shield quicker when it takes 3 hits. So I did eventually do it.
When you hit him, he just refills it for free, and it was like, oh, okay, that's basically turn brain off.
I don't remember it refilling that quickly, but this is probably a Michael Wrong moment, so we'll move on.
Yeah, when you hit him, it refills it fully. You
the entire bar?
Every single... Yes.
I don't know how I missed that.
Yep.
Wow.
I just spammed it. As soon as he popped up, you just use chaos control and then run into him again, and then it refills it by the time he comes back up. That's another reason that the Mephiles fight is my least favorite, probably, is because I think it's the easiest one.
I'm going to need to verify this.
Disappointing shot.
My least favorite is probably the Bio Lizard.
I'm sorry, which boss are you referring to?
No, oh, fuck, I'm so sorry. The Bio Moose.
Yes, there you go.
I'm so sorry. I don't know, like, honestly, there weren't bad bosses in this game. I thought they were all good to some extent. I guess they just didn't excite me that much. I think maybe Metal Overlord is the best one. I think.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite.
But you know, it's like, I don't know. It's like we saw the Biomoose, we saw Metal Overlord, we saw Mephiles. I honestly thought we were going to get one more boss. I thought we would get a genuinely good infinite fight.
Yeah.
It seemed like the game to do it.
I was wanting that as well. I thought that would have been cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was kind of holding
We're
out.
talking about redeeming good ideas from games that weren't executed well.
Yeah, I would have liked that.
That loops into another thing I've been thinking about lately, is that I really don't want them to get rid of shit like Infinite just because it may not have worked for everybody. Because that's just a shitty thing to do, you know? When we live in a world where the Black Arms are back in an actually cool way, I mean, it kind of just proves that you can keep these things. You don't have to throw them all out. I think an Infinite would have gone hard.
Yeah, because like to paraphrase Rich Evans, I enjoy Infinite for the ideas they failed to execute properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel kind of similarly. I mean, I really like Silver. And what the fuck has Silver ever done outside of 06? Like, you know?
Yeah.
I mean...
But like, honestly, he didn't... I wouldn't say he even fully worked in 06, but something resonated with a lot of people, and he's still around.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should get rid of him for the same reason I don't think we should get rid of Infinite. And I wish he was in here, because he probably would have had a cool boss fight.
Hey, Sega, make DLC. Give us an Infinite boss fight. I'll pay money for that.
You know, I guess since... well, first of all, Black Doom is voiced by young Xehanort in this game for some reason.
Yes, he is.
Which I thought was funny. He's in, like, everything. He was in Mega Man 11 as Mega Man, even, so... And I guess, what did we think of Black Doom in this video game?
I mean, he's certainly Black Doom. And he certainly likes Radical Highway.
Well, I don't think anyone's going to dispute that.
I didn't really think much of Black Doom.
I think Black Doom pretty much just served as the thing Shadow could hit.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked for that purpose. I don't even necessarily think that's a bad thing. It's just kind of like they were able to kind of reincorporate them in a Generation Z adventure, and then that was that.
I didn't even like him in Shadow the Hedgehog. But I mean, like, it's cool that he came back. I think it's cool that they actually acknowledge this weird part in Shadow's history.
Right.
But he still was just never my favorite.
Yeah, that's fair. I can't even say that I like him for a particularly complicated reason in this game. I just thought he was an effective foil counterpart antagonist for a shadow-focused video game.
Yeah.
And that he was better in this than he was in. Because the problem with Shadow the Hedgehog is that the story has like no structure because of the paths. So nothing follows from anything else. And then you get to the end and they dump everything on you. And by that point, you just don't care because the game is boring and it sucks. So like this game did more to legitimize the idea that he was made from his DNA, because that's just something that's just kind of thrown in the last story of Shadow, and it comes after he stands up after being paralyzed with no explanation, and then they dump all this crap about Gerald building the Eclipse cannon to destroy the comet or whatever. So in this, they actually play around with that duality, and you get to see Maria as like a counterbalancing influence on him. I really liked the actress who played Maria in this game, by the way.
The last time we met, you ruined my nail art.
Because this is the first time in the games, at least, that she actually felt convincingly like a child. As you look at her model in Sonic Adventure 2, and it's like, it looks exactly like the secretary lady. You know?
Yeah.
And then in this, she actually looks convincingly like a child, and you actually understand there, because like you guys were saying that Maria was kind of a nothing character, more of a plot device in SA2, really. Where in this one, I did get a sense of who she was as a person. And even though that speech about a shadow leading you to the light was really corny, it fit with her character.
No, that's exactly the kind of corny I want in Sonic.
Yeah, it works.
Well, that's fair.
Some SA2 shit. I need more of that.
That's fair. Yeah, and I think when we talked about Frontiers, we were talking about Mike Pollock giving some really weird reads in that game. Like,
I understand. Go. Fulfill your function.
Yeah.
But he was really good in this game as Gerald.
Yeah, I thought so too.
So it just makes me wonder what the hell happened.
Sounds really weird in Japanese, let me just say. Eggman sounds very strange. Like, I wouldn't even say bad, it's just not really what I would have expected. He sounds like a more traditionally old man character you'd see like in an anime or something. I don't know, it's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Like his voice is a little more hoarse and raspy and like, I don't know. But I really liked what they did with Maria and Gerald. It like kind of, because those two characters have always felt like, as much as I love SA2, and I do love that game, they basically were just devices to move the plot forward.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I really feel like we've dove into anything about how they feel about Shadow and like their relationship and stuff.
We actually
and
got...
It's not something I ever would have asked for, but it's something I appreciate that we have now.
And that sort of dovetails into the Gerald Journal, which I only read half of, but
that was cool as well. It was a neat thing that they made. But also had cute shit like Maria is the reason Shadow has skate shoes and stuff like that, which actually I think they did in Sonic 3 as well.
Yeah, she's skating around.
Yeah. Speaking of Black Doom like we were earlier, like being whatever, I think the thing that worked the most for the story for me was not him as a character, but the Doom powers in Shadow, like battling against him and really making him a lot more like vitriolic and shit. I think that worked really well as an arc for Shadow, where it's not necessarily like, I guess it's
more of an
kind
internal
of like he's struggling
conflict.
to accept that. Yeah, it's a good internal conflict for him is the best way to put it. I really enjoyed him struggling against that and like fighting through it, and made the end of it really cool. The like smile he has for Maria, that shit, it warmed my heart.
Indeed.
I love that.
I still laughed at the single tear, though.
You laughed at it?
I did laugh at it, yeah. Tried to do that.
That's okay. That's one way to symbolize that.
I won't call it forced, but it was a little much.
No, I loved it. What was weird for me is that the game ends as soon as that happens. It is like very jarring.
Yeah.
How would you want the game to end?
I don't know. Like the way that it fades to black and it's just kind of over. I don't know. It's very strange. It felt really quick.
I don't know. Like for me, it worked. Like, oh, okay. We know where he goes after this. He's going to help Sonic fight the big bad.
You got this, Sonic.
Yeah, he's going to help him.
Yeah, he's going to be like,
nothing.
hey, Sonic, on your feet, asshole.
I think that maybe is the biggest thing about this story, is that the things that don't work about it for me are because of Sonic Generations. So I don't really know how fair that is to the game itself.
Yeah, that's fair.
It just feels really weird that this is happening concurrently with the way Generations was written.
Yeah, like you have...
It's very strange.
You have a bunch of Pontac and Graf gesticulating over here, and then meanwhile you have this intense character drama about Shadow confronting his inner monster.
It's just strange. challenge, but I haven't had a Sonic story move me like that in quite a while. So that combined with dope level design, it really won me over.
Yeah.
Man. Like, I played this game a lot. It was really good.
You know,
I'm surprised.
I gotta say that, like, I mean, I've been enjoying the past few years that we've had with Sonic games. Like, I enjoyed Frontiers, and I enjoyed Superstars, and I enjoyed this, you know? And, you know, I understand why people, like, in our friend group typically don't like Frontiers, and I especially understand why some people don't like Superstars, but it's also just nice to hear that, like, people are enjoying this game, you know?
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, it was pretty much like, I mean, I know there are people who don't like it, obviously, like any game, but it was more unanimous praise than I've seen for something since, like, Sonic Mania, maybe. I don't know.
It feels pretty good.
It does.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they will fuck up this momentum next year.
You know
hope
what?
not.
I choose to have optimism.
Like, as far as, like, I'm concerned, it's like I don't want to necessarily say they won me back, but I have been eating good, as the kids say, with the movies and with some of the games. It's like, I've been okay. I've been having a good time
Well,
with
really,
Sonic.
the ways in which I don't enjoy Frontiers were at least interesting, and I could see where they were trying to go. And that's all I could really ask for, because I did not understand what was going on before that point.
Would you say that it's a scrunkly scrimblow, as the kids would say?
Yeah.
Michael, do you kiss your mother with that mouth?
I don't tend to kiss my mom a lot. I don't know about you guys, but usually it's
I
hugs.
mean, I don't know. I give my mom a little kiss on the head. I mean, she's short, so it works. I
Yeah.
love my mom.
I love my mommy.
Well, do we have anything else to say about this Sonado game?
I liked it a lot, and, well, you know, I think it's pretty jarring going from this to Generations and then from Generations to this. There definitely is like a bit of a adjustment you have to do, but I mean, honestly, it's like we got two of the best Sonic games in one package. I think that's pretty rad.
Yeah, like you were
Even
saying,
though I thought that some of what he did in Frontiers was a bit shaky, as somebody who does like what the comics are doing and likes what Shadow Gens was doing, I'm pretty optimistic about how they'll be written as well in the future.
Yeah,
That's
it's
pretty
like
nice.
I like Ian Flynn as a writer, and I like a lot of what he does. It's just if he could just like dial it back on like the self-referential, like, do you remember that time on West Side Island? It's just like the thing I love. It's like you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. It's okay. You know, you know your stuff. Just write a good story.
Yeah,
you can do it. You've done it before.
we've played these games too, Ian.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, we got
you.
you.
Get it.
You got the job for a reason. You know your shit. You don't got to prove anything to us. Like, I'm not trying to be discouraging. I'm not trying to be like insulting or anything. I'm trying to be encouraging. It's like, listen,
Right to your strengths,
Yeah.
Mr. Ian Flynn.
Yeah, basically.
Your strengths lie in your character work more so than referencing things.
Yeah.
So focus more on that.
Aside from that, yeah, no, I'm peachy. I've been eating good.
Well, I've certainly eaten a lot of peaches, but you were saying something. You were saying something to the effect of you don't necessarily think that they've won you back, but I would say like it does feel like for the first time they have a direction that makes sense. There is actually some anticipation for the next Sonic product because it feels like finally it's in better hands and they've given up on some of the dumb things people didn't like. We actually have designers who know how to design a level. We have people who know how to write an actual story that isn't just a kiddie cartoon. You know, it feels like there's something to look forward to. Like, oh, I am actually curious what they make next. Whereas, but like,
and say whatever you want about Kishimoto, but like at the very least, he shows, and it's pretty evident that he gives a shit about what he's doing. You know, that he cares, and really, like that's all I could really ask for when someone's making a game. Is like, hey, as long as you believe in whatever it is that you're making, I'm going to be interested in it. So the franchise, like ever since like the 2020s hit, I feel like the franchise has been going in a very interesting direction. You know,
I feel like it's finally going in a direction.
it's going in a direction.
That's pretty nice.
And it's not a bad
we've
one.
rounded the corner.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, folks, if you enjoyed our podcast for January, whenever I get this out, obviously next we will be talking about the year in gaming that was 2024. And so I hope you all look forward
I'm
to that.
sure that it will come out in 2026.
Well, give me some credit. It all depends on when we can record this.
Yeah.
The next one, because Ryan's been really busy this year. I gotta say, like,
It's
I mean,
been
you get that
insane.
dough, man.
I'm trying.
You know, it just is what it is. We got to have the right game, the right topic to talk about. And, you know, this year was kind of slower as far as releases go. Like, we're not going to do a whole podcast on, I don't know, what the hell else would there have been?
Sonic Rumble.
Oh, yeah. Which there was a commercial for that before the movie started.
Oh, there was?
Yeah, it's just like, and it was Mike Pollock. He's just like, come play Sonic Rumble on your mobile device.
No.
Yeah. Anyways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.
Toodles.
We never do!